reliable, and sustainable water and wastewater services to the district's residents, businesses, and visitors. DC Water was created as an independent authority of the district government in 1996 and provides drinking water, sewage collection, and sewage treatment for the district and other neighboring jurisdictions. To distribute drinking water, DC Water operates more than 1,350 miles of pipes, 4 pumping stations, 5 reservoirs, 4 elevated water storage tanks, 43,860 valves, and 9,500 public hydrants. To collect wastewater, DC Water operates 1,800 miles of sanitary and combined sewers, 22 flow metering stations, and 9 off-site wastewater pumping stations. DC Water also operates the Blue Plains Advanced Wastewater Treatment Plant, the world's largest advanced wastewater treatment facility. DC Water's goals include protecting public health and ensuring environmental stewardship, promoting water conservation, and supporting economic development. DC Water also works to address challenges such as aging infrastructure, water quality issues, and the impacts of climate change while striving for operational efficiency and affordability for customers, all of which will be part of recent events we'll be discussing as well regarding the interceptor pipe failure and spill into the Potomac River. With that, a couple of comments on the format for today's hearing. Public witnesses testifying on their own behalf will have 3 minutes to testify. ANC commissioners or those testifying on behalf of an organization will have 5 minutes. If there are multiple witnesses testifying on behalf of the same organization, only one witness will have the full 5 minutes to testify, and any other witnesses will each have 3 minutes. We're going to be using a timer to keep us all on schedule, so please keep an eye out for that. For witnesses that are testifying in person, when you hear me call your name, if you'll come join the table up here. And if you're joining us on Zoom, you'll see a prompt to join as a panelist, so please accept that and we'll bring you in. Most panels will be hybrid with both people here in person as well as online, so we'll be toggling back and forth a little bit. And for anyone who is interested in submitting testimony for the record, the committee will accept written testimony through the council's hearing management system at lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings, and the record for today's hearing is going to close on March 16th, 2026. With that, let's turn to our first panel of public witnesses. Again, I believe it's going to be a combo of people that are here as well as online. I've got Chris Weiss, Executive Director of the DC Environmental Network, Hidrik Balin, President of the Potomac Conservancy, Dean Nayex, Potomac Riverkeeper with the Potomac Riverkeeper Network, Jamie Alberti, Green Infrastructure Program Director with the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, and Jamie's joining us online, Hugh Hilliard, Chair of the Canoe Cruisers Association, who's here in person. Jamoni Overby, DC Conservation Nature Forward. Here right now. Rennie Simpath, Public Witness. David Solana, Public Witness. And Roger Green, Public Witness. Okay, we have a couple of those folks that are online. But let's start with folks that are here in the room. So Chris Weiss, I've got you at first. Good morning, and when you're ready.
Good morning, Chairperson and council members and staff. My name is Chris Weiss, and I direct the activities of the DC Environmental Network. I also serve on the Mayor's Leadership Council for a Cleaner Anacostia River. I am testifying today on the performance of DC Water. It was not that long ago, well, over 20 years ago, that I found myself representing Friends of the Earth at a District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority meeting, listening to representatives from Earth Justice, Anacostia Watershed Society, and Natural Resources Defense Council make the case for what later would be called the Clean Rivers Project. I will always remember a number of board members literally laughing and suggesting how impossible and far too expensive a serious effort to reduce raw sewage discharges in area rivers and creeks would be. Well, of course, as we all know, DC Water eventually drank the crazy environmentalist Kool-Aid with vengeance. DC Water has already completed a meaningful segment of the tunnels, and we are already enjoying some reductions of raw sewage discharges in the Anacostia River. Last week at the February 25th DC Water briefing on the Potomac Interceptor break, where millions of gallons of raw sewage polluted Maryland, DC, and Virginia waterways, David Gaddis, CEO, the general manager of DC Water, made a statement suggesting that the region had benefited from the technical expertise and experience of the DC Water and Sewer Authority. DC Water was better positioned than many utilities to respond to the massive raw sewage discharges because they had a team who had the requisite skills to respond. That was the inference I heard, if not exactly what he said, and I agree with it. I am a little concerned that there are not that many environmental organizations at this hearing. I am so glad the Potomac Conservancy, Alliance for Chesapeake Bay, Canoe Cruisers Association, Nature Forward went with Green Strategies in the campaign for lead-free water. are here today. The DC Environmental Network came very late to the discussion, and I think we are starting to realize we have a problem that will need long-term solutions. The good news is our fearless Potomac Riverkeeper, Dean, has spent many 14-hour days since the January 19th break trying to make sure everyone knows what is at stake. We're very grateful for his commitment since that sad day. At the briefing, DC Water and their PowerPoint described next steps succinctly: repair and flow restoration, environmental restoration, and continued rehabilitation. I would add to that list these questions. How are we going to pay for the efforts to restore and rehabilitate? DC Mayor Bowser is taking one of the important steps to secure some federal funding. There are some political challenges related to the Trump administration that Maryland is facing, but in the end, they too should follow the lead of DC. How are we going to help the watershed businesses in the district and Maryland? How are we going to restore the public trust? How do we get people safely back into our rivers and creeks without being afraid? Can we get back to a place where the region won't be afraid of sewage contamination in their food? It has taken environmental organizations and government agencies decades to get people back on our rivers. If we don't do it right, it could take us many decades more to rebuild that trust. Talking to Dean yesterday, I became convinced that water quality monitoring will be critical to restoring the public's trust. We're probably talking about more monitoring than what DC Water, MDE, and the District Department of Energy and Environment are currently suggesting. The Potomac Riverkeeper Network identifies real-time public protection as a first essential action. PRK's essential actions list states, first, real-time public health protection must become the governing priority. That means daily, publicly accessible water quality monitoring at recreation sites throughout the impacted reach of the Potomac and downstream tributaries. Clear health advisories tied to science-based thresholds available electronically and placed additionally where people access the river, and coordinated interstate communication so families, anglers, and boaters receive constant guidance no matter which shoreline they visit. Monitoring must continue through seasonal change and the high flow events to ensure the river is genuinely safe, not merely assumed to be. I have included Potomac Riverkeepers Network's meaningful accountability must now include several essential actions document below. The DC Environmental Network is trying to catch up, but much thanks to the environmental groups, DC Water, and others who are trying to fix this big problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiss. I also was working off two different witness sheets, so I apologize. I forgot to call up Evan Quinter as well. So Evan, Dean, if you don't mind, what I'll do is I'll have Evan just kind of slide a chair up next to you, because I assume your testimonies might work well together. So Evan will, yeah, just a slight shift, and we can make this work. All right. So now, next, let me turn to Hedrick Balin.
Yeah,
you correct me, please. Hedrick, can you, yeah, there you go. Red light's on. You're
there
good.
you go. Well, good morning. I'm Hedrick Balin, president of Potomac Conservancy. We're one of the region's leading clean water advocates, and more than 42,000 supporters stand with us to protect the Potomac River. So 6 weeks ago, on January 19th, a catastrophic failure sent hundreds of millions of gallons of sewage into the Potomac River. I want to acknowledge the DC Water engineers who rapidly designed an emergency bypass, and the DC Water crews who worked in brutal conditions, winter conditions, to get that bypass operational within days. These efforts mattered. But let's be clear, this disaster is outrageous. It's unacceptable. After decades of progress cleaning up our Potomac, it's inexcusable that in 2026, there's an open sewer flowing upstream of our nation's capital. The public has every right to be angry and upset. That anger was on full display last week at the public meetings that DC Water held, where more than 500 residents showed up seeking answers. Instead, many left feeling dismissed. Limited time for questions and incomplete responses do not build community trust. They erode it. When communities show up in good faith, DC Water must meet them with transparency, humility, and most importantly, facts. This crisis, by the way, is not going to be over once the sewage is back in a pipe. Containment is not accountability. The ecological harm is significant, but so is the damage to the public trust. To restore the trust, DC Water must act decisively. We laid out a number of actions DC Water must take in our February 9th, 2026 letter to them. I want to highlight 3 of our requests of DC Water. First, DC Water must commit publicly this week to a fully independent third-party investigation into the root causes of this collapse and to implement its recommendations and system changes. An internal review of the facts is not enough. The public deserves answers to some basic questions. What did DC Water know about the condition of this section of the pipe? When did it know it? There is a 2024 report on the Potomac Interceptor that was referenced at a February 20th press conference, yet key details still remain undisclosed. This lack of transparency is deeply troubling. Second, environmental remediation plans must meaningfully engage the communities, the impacted communities, before the plan is finalized. This includes towns such as Glen Echo and Cabin John, downstream users such as at Minnie's Island, local businesses, high school rowers, fishermen, and public health and environmental organizations. They all must have a seat at the table, not as an afterthought, but as a partner. Third, DC Water and other government entities must commit to a robust public long-term monitoring at the spill site and downstream throughout the summer, not just a few more weeks. The Potomac is a treasured destination. Families deserve clear, timely data on water quality so they know when it's safe to fish, paddle, or let their children splash along the shoreline. This spill is a warning. When critical infrastructure maintenance is delayed, when investments lag, the consequences are devastating. What happened here is a stark reminder that neglecting water systems puts public health and the entire ecosystem at risk. The Potomac will recover. Rivers are resilient, but public trust does not rebound on its own. It must be earned through transparency, accountability, and authentic engagement. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next, I've got Dean Nalyux, who's our Potomac River Keeper.
This is, I get 5 and Emma gets 3?
Yes.
Okay, just to be clear.
Yeah, thanks.
So I just want to echo everything that's been said here. I agree with. I think moving forward, in case I do run out of time, I really just want to say I think looking ahead, we really need to just focus on what Hedrick pointed out as accountability for DC Water and making sure that those who have been impacted by this spill directly, particularly financially, that there is some type of support for those people like our watermen, charter captains, and others. And so, 243 million gallons, not millions of gallons, but hundreds of millions of gallons went into the Potomac River. And, for a group like ours, that's for the past 6 years has done water quality monitoring every week and launched the Swimmable Potomac campaign to convince people to come back and use this river. I can't tell you what a gut punch this is that we've lost that in a single week because of all this sewage that's been dumped in the river. And the impacts of this are just so significant. The perception, regardless of what the water quality data says, is just so big and important. So there was a poll that I saw on, I think Channel 7 ran that I saw yesterday, asking if people were comfortable coming back to the river once these advisories are lifted, which started today. 90% said no. And so I thought, well, okay, maybe that's just people watching TV, not river users. So I spoke at Friends of Fletcher's Cove just last night. There was over 50 anglers there, usually who would be very excited about coming back for the shad season and fishing at Fletcher's Cove, which I do every year as well. And I did a poll. I just said, hey, how many people here are comfortable, all you anglers coming back and using the river and fishing again? And literally less than 10% of those people raised their hand. So all these anglers who normally use the river are basically saying they're not comfortable touching the water, regardless of what the data says. And I keep hearing this perception up and down. You see it on social media. You see, I've talked to watermen who are terrified. We catch, pull about 3 million tons of blue cats out of the river every year. That season basically started today. These blue cat watermen are terrified that basically nobody's going to be taking their fish. These people are going to be put out of work. Crab season starts really soon. I've heard from watermen both in Maryland and Virginia saying like, hey, I'm going to put $20,000 in my crab pots and get them in the river like I do every year, but I'm afraid people aren't going to take those crabs. And I talked to Captain Tim Blanchard, based right here, charter captain in DC, just last night. He was at that meeting. He just opened a new business. He's got 3 boats. Nobody wants to go out fishing with him this spring. That is devastating. Caleva School saying that parents are saying they won't put their kids in the river, even though they're going to operate above the spill site. It's the perception of the river that's been harmed. I've had countless people telling me they're not going to let their kids row crew. They're not going to let their kids go to sailing school. So all of those businesses are going to be directly impacted. And DC Water, while they are working to fix the problem, and I do commend the crews on site, who is going to put money forward, some of this federal relief dollars to support? I think there needs to be an emergency funding mechanism to support these watermen and people who are directly harmed financially from the river. And then obviously the water quality monitoring is ongoing. We have requested to meet with DC DOEE for almost a month now. And I talked to you, Mr. Allen, when you came out the site. I still have not gotten a meeting request, no follow-up emails, not one single. We've tried to meet with the EPA. So the long-term monitoring that extends over the summer that's been requested here is vitally important if we're going to change the public's perception about this river. And then lastly, who is going to hold DC Water accountable? I could speak another 5 minutes of their response of getting misinformation wrong, saying that the spill's been contained, misreporting data information, assuring the public that no spills are occurring. They only have 600,000 gallons released on Super Bowl Sunday, 3 weeks after the spill. And then David Gaddis has the audacity to get up and compliment his comms team. I mean, this has been outrageous. Any one of us who represents an organization would be fired if we constantly misrepresented and we're so inaccurate in reporting out our information to the media and the public like the way DC Water has done. So there's no accountability from what we can see, and they need to step up and protect public health in our waterways and try to lift this blemish from the Potomac River.
Thank you, Dean. Next, Evan, let me turn to you.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up and kind of emphasize how important the actual water quality component of all this is. We've seen at this point that we're still dealing with high bacteria levels at Lock 10, and we still have these unknowns of nutrient levels and potential environmental impacts that are coming down the line, such as algal blooms, fish die-offs, eutrophication. These are things that we need to be monitoring for. And it seems like the infrastructure for that is not in place yet, especially since DC Water has said that initial repairs would be completed in mid-March, where overflows are still a risk. And these longer-term repairs will go at least until 9 months from now. So this is really a time where we need more monitoring. And, PRCAN's going to keep monitoring, University of Maryland's going to keep monitoring, and we applaud DC DOE for stepping up to the daily monitoring of E. coli. Of course, we want them to do more with nutrient and sediment testing and monitoring for these environmental impacts that I mentioned. What worries me is that I've asked DC Water twice now of how long they anticipate continuing monitoring. They've said, we do not know. And as of this morning, there has not been an update to DC Water's monitoring data since February 26th. This is both on their website and the DC DOEE website. So this is a time where we really need to be doubling down on this monitoring and making it more publicly available. And we're seeing that that's not the case right now. And again, just to echo things that have been said already, we need an independent investigation into the causes. We need economic relief both for watermen and shoreline communities here in DC and further downriver in the Potomac. And when I was here last, we briefly speak about the remediation plan that has now been shared at least briefly with the community and with environmental groups. But it stops right at the banks of the Potomac. It addresses the physical degradation around Clara Barton Highway and in the actual C&O Canal. And then it doesn't address the river that was actually polluted. So we hope that this remediation plan will be able to be scrutinized by both the DC Council, but also third-party environmental groups, academic agencies. We need more voices on this remediation plan because it does not affect and does not address the impacts on the river. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next, I have Jamie Alberti, who's joining us online. So Jamie, if you can hear me. Let's see, actually, Jamie Alberti, we're trying to promote you to a panelist. So if you can keep an eye out for that to accept that. Want to do this while we bring Jamie online onto the panel. Hugh, how about we turn to you for your testimony, and then we'll come back, Jamie, to you once we get you on the panel. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Allen and members of the DC Council. I've been a long-term resident of the District of Columbia, and one of the best things about living here is the Potomac River. It's just an incredible resource that I and my family have enjoyed for years. But this morning, I'm here to testify on behalf of the Canoe Cruisers Association, which has been operating for 70 years as a canoe and kayak club in the greater Washington area. We have currently over 500 members. Our members spend a lot of time on the Potomac River, including areas below the site of the January 19th Potomac Interceptor pipeline spill, and we're deeply concerned about this. I'll speak briefly, but really the reason I'm here and the rest of my co-panelists are here, I think, is really to urge the DC Council to exercise its oversight responsibilities with respect to DC Water, which has a board appointed by the mayor, confirmed by the DC Council. And I share many of the concerns that my co-panelists have been expressing about the shortcomings in DC Water's response, especially their communication and taking input from the public and helping to reassure the public about the safety of the water. So we've written some letters to DC Water and have asked for some specific steps, which I'll go through briefly today. First, as others have expressed, we think DC Water needs to conduct a thorough and transparent analysis to determine the root cause of the rupture and identify other portions of the pipeline that are at risk of failure in the future. Second, they need to take appropriate preventive measures to reduce the risk and assure that ruptures don't happen in the future, including accelerating the completion of the Potomac Interceptor Rehabilitation Project. Third, they need to prepare and implement a comprehensive plan to clean up and remediate the canal and the Potomac River. And very importantly, they need an open public input process where they actually communicate their plans to the public and also consider the input from the public about what needs to be done to rehabilitate the river and the canal. Fourth, it's very important that DC Water or other entities conduct routine water testing at multiple sites below the pipeline spill. There are a lot of areas that we've communicated to DC Water where there's a lot of recreational activity, and they need routine testing at all these sites and communicate that to the public clearly and in a timely manner. So that hopefully the water quality will improve and people will see the data on that and eventually be comfortable to go back in the water again. And on the other hand, if the data are not reassuring, then they'll know when they should stay away from the water. Um, and there are a lot of entities involved in water sampling. Potomac Riverkeeper has really taken the lead on this initially, and now we've seen DC DOEE step up and DC Water step up, but we think independent water testing is better than having DC Water do it itself, and we think people will be have more faith in data that comes from independent testing sources. And as others have mentioned, it's not just testing the water itself. They should be testing the sediment, and they should have a broad range of tests that look for a number of pollutants in the river. So just really want to emphasize again, DC Water, I mean, the DC Council should be exercising its oversight authority and making sure that DC Water responds thoroughly to this rupture, and that these sorts of things don't happen in the future, and that they remediate the results of this recent spill. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. All right, I think we've got Jamie Alberti back now on the panel. So Jamie, let me turn to you. There we go. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jamie Alberti, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. We are a regional nonprofit that has partnered with the district for more than 20 years to improve water quality, strengthen compliance, and build a local green workforce. Today, I want to focus on 3 points that are central to environmental accountability and long-term success. First, clean rivers mean both gray and green infrastructure. The Clean Rivers Project, mandated by the 2005 Federal Consent Decree and modified in 2015 to include green infrastructure, was intentionally designed as a combined strategy. The deep tunnel systems are capturing billions of gallons of combined sewer overflows. That progress is real and measurable, but the 2015 modification recognized something critical. Tunnels alone are not enough. Rain gardens, permeable pavement, and other green infrastructure practices reduce runoff before it reaches the combined system, reducing pressure on tunnels, overflow frequency, and pollutant loads. The 1/3 reduction of green stormwater programming at DOEE and complete removal of funding for green infrastructure maintenance puts our clean rivers goals at risk. 375 practices are now unmaintained, installation rates have dropped by 300, and contractor teams built around specialized training destabilized. This resulted from special purpose revenue funds being inappropriately repurposed in FY26 to cover other district expenses. When we allow green systems to be sidelined and maintenance to halt, we weaken the full compliance strategy envisioned under the Clean Rivers Project Consent Decree. We need to ensure that we protect the investment that we have already made. Second, workforce development is a compliance strategy. DC Water has shown national leadership through the National Green Infrastructure Certification Program, or NGICP. This program recognizes that skilled labor is essential to infrastructure success. Our GSI maintenance program was the applied workforce engine behind this vision. For 4 years, over 100 district residents gained paid year-round employment, 89 were returning citizens, and crews maintained over 350 green infrastructure assets annually. This was environmental compliance delivered through workforce development. When maintenance funding was eliminated, 30 dedicated positions were lost, district businesses were destabilized, and the pipeline connecting certification to employment weakened. Eliminating maintenance work undermines both workforce mobility and compliance outcomes. Green infrastructure does not maintain itself. Skilled workers do. Third, the Potomac Interceptor disaster proves that monitoring matters. The Potomac Interceptor failure underscores a simple truth. We cannot afford to slow down, under-resource, or fragment water quality monitoring. When infrastructure fails, whether gray or green, early detection and transparent monitoring protect public health and public trust. The Potomac incident demonstrated how quickly water quality can become compromised and highlighted the importance of centralized monitoring, data transparency, and interagency coordination. We cannot allow monitoring systems to erode at the same time we are asking infrastructure to perform at its peak. Clean rivers require constant vigilance. DC Water has led boldly through the Clean Rivers Project and through workforce certification initiatives. The path forward is to reinforce the integrated model that has brought us this far. We respectfully urge DC Water to strengthen interagency coordination to ensure all compliance aspects of the Clean Rivers Project are fulfilled, reinforce workforce pipelines and environmental maintenance careers, and champion accountability measures that protect dedicated funding, infrastructure investments, and water quality outcomes. The tunnels will be completed in 2030. The success of this generational investment depends on maintaining every part of the system. We stand ready to continue partnering to ensure that clean rivers remain a lived reality, not just a capital project milestone. We hope the Council's funding priorities also reflect this. We appreciate your continued leadership and commitment to environmental stewardship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Next we had, I don't think Jamoni Overby was here. Oh, is now. Okay. So Jamoni, I think you're here now, so let me turn to you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Chairperson and members of the committee. My name is Jamoni Overby, and I'm here today on behalf of the Choose Clean Water Coalition. I'm also working my capacity with Nature Forward as the DC Conservation Advocate. The Choose Clean Water Coalition is a network of more than 300 organizations working across the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Thank you for your continued commitment to Washington, D.C., its intersectional environmental solutions, and prioritizing both ecological health and community well-being, Councilmember Allen. Our coalition represents advocates working on climate change, environmental justice, clean energy, recreation, and public access. What unites us is our shared commitment to restoring clean water in our rivers and streams, including those that flow through the district and ultimately into the Chesapeake Bay. The Potomac River is not just a waterway, it is a source of water, recreation, economic activity, ecological habitat, and cultural identity. When raw sewage enters the Potomac, it is not only an environmental crisis, but a public health emergency. Since January 19, 2026, sewage spill from the Potomac Interceptor, independent monitoring by University of Maryland and the Potomac Riverkeeper Network has revealed deeply concerning findings. Researchers at University of Maryland School of Public Health found that E. coli bacteria levels were thousands times above the US EPA recreational safety limit of 410 mpn. On multiple sampling dates, January 21st, January 28th, and February 3rd, even as late as February 12th, bacteria levels remain more than 100 times above the contact limit at certain sites. Alarmingly elevated E. coli levels were detected as far as 10 miles downstream from the spill site. In addition, Staphylococcus aureus was detected at the spill site and 9 miles downstream. 33% of sample sites tested positive for this pathogen. Even more concerning, MRSA, a dangerous antibiotic-resistant strain, was identified at the location where raw sewage had entered the river. These findings are very important numbers. They represent real health risks to families who kayak at Fletcher's Cove, students who row in the Potomac, angler fishers along the shoreline, and communities living downstream near the National Harbor. Data collected by Potomac Riverkeeper Network further demonstrates the severity of the contamination. These are not minor things at all, but they're catastrophic spikes far beyond what is considered safe for human contact. In light of this, the Choose Clean Water Coalition is calling for 5 critical actions with DC Water, including a lot of this interagency coordination. First, full transparency. Residents deserve regular detailed updates about contamination levels and effectiveness of containment and remediation efforts. Second, continuous and coordinated monitoring. Monitoring should occur from Fletcher's Cove to the Potomac and Anacostia shorelines and downstream to the National Harbor. This monitoring must be conducted by DC, and we thank you for DOEE in increasing that monitoring, but also in collaboration with Maryland and Virginia agencies, not solely reliant on the responsible utility. Third, comprehensive environmental investigation. Raw sewage introduces excessive nutrients, pathogens, harmful bacteria, and other pollutants that can disrupt aquatic ecosystems and pose serious public health concerns. Monitoring must assess the full scope of all of these impacts. Fourth, environmental restoration. A comprehensive environmental impact assessment should guide restoration efforts that to address the harm of the C&O Canal and the Potomac River. And fifth, accountability. We must understand what caused this and ensure that it never happens again. I've heard some of my colleagues mention the special purpose revenue funds that were used, or the misuse of budget dollars to make sure that the infrastructure is in place, and we need to make sure that this can never happen again. Industry experts estimate that reinforced concrete sewer pipes have a service life of 75 to 100 years. The pipes were installed between 1960 and 1963, approximately 65 years ago. So we have a few questions that I'll enclose in my written comments, but some of them include questions such as what factors contributed to the premature failure, or are there other sections similarly vulnerable? But I'll let you read those in our enclosed written comments. In conclusion, water is life, and it is clean water is a matter of public trust. And when the infrastructure fails at this scale, our response must be grounded in science, transparency, accountability, and of course, community. And thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions that you may have.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Overby. All right, and then our last witness on this panel, we have Roger Green, who's online. So, Mr. Green, let me turn to you. All right, Mr. Green, we try to put you on the panel. We need you to accept it so that we can have you share your testimony. All right, let's try that again. Mr. Green, are you there?
Okay, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. There we go. Good morning.
Good morning. Let me get started here. Good morning. My name is Roger Green. I've been testifying at DC Water Oversight hearings for almost every year for 12 years now. My purpose has been to inform about the problems associated with lead pipes delivering water. I've described the damage to children's brains resulting from lead in drinking water, and I've tried to emphasize the immediate need to eliminate all lead water pipes. Over the years I've been testifying, I've tried to cajole council members into insisting that DC Water be operated like a public service, rather than as a profit-obsessed business with overpaid executives and sclerotic management that has sacrificed the public's health for better short-term financial outcomes. DC Water's policy has been to slow walk the replacement of all lead water lines because of the cost, and the city council has not insisted that they do otherwise. Council members Denise Lewis George and Brooke Pinto stood out as exceptions, with each presenting bills to push forward the removal of lead lines. Corporate journalism rarely reports on the ongoing problems of lead water because it doesn't generate a lot of attention, and fixing the problem can cost business tax increases. So many of our local politicians are not motivated to use their power to insist that our water company be operated for the public's benefit. Charging customers for lead-tainted water and then telling them that it's their responsibility to buy lead water filters to make their water safe to drink was always wrong. Yet DC Water, with the support of most of the city council, continues to do this. The elected city council is making the immoral choice to provide millions of dollars in public funding for privately owned sports facilities, while refusing to insist that the removal of all lead water lines be adequately funded. I am ashamed of most of the council elected by our community as such a low moral standard that they are unwilling to stand up for protecting the health of our community. I no longer testify at these hearings because I naively hope to convince the council to do the morally right thing. I testify because I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing the right thing. I believe that the council is committed to doing I am testifying today so that the historical record will accurately show that society's failure to protect its vulnerable members was not because the community did not care or did not speak up, but because our city leaders refused to respond morally. Future anthropologists will find children's brains damaged by lead, and future historians will note that public leaders refused to fund the expeditious removal of lead water pipes while building sports coliseums to entertain and enrich the upper classes. If our society's moral shortcomings don't lead to ending our existence on this planet, this period of our history will be written, and our actions will eventually be judged by future generations. The verdict will be unforgiving. I have seen some progress in the last 12 years, and I am still hopeful. But DC Water and the City Council are not doing all they can and should do to provide safe drinking water to the community. DC Water and the DC City Council can and should provide the resources and management to replace all remaining lead water lines within the next 3 to 5 years. And until all lead lines are replaced, people served by lead water lines should be regularly given free lead water filters, or at least stop charging them for water that is not safe to drink. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Thank you, everybody, for this panel. When I called your name, didn't have anybody step up. Tell you what, since I don't necessarily have a chair, Evan, are you okay? All right. So David, come on up. Got it. So I have another panel I can add you to as well. But if you want to go ahead and do your testimony here, but I know Dean and Evan, I'm going to call you back up for questions when we come in a little bit. But David, go ahead. If you'll push the button so the red light comes on. There you go.
Okay, thank you. My name is David Solana. I kayak on the Potomac River 4 to 5 days every week. And so this is very directly impactful to me and many of my friends. Water is life. DC Water's slogan says just how much trust we give them every moment of every day. We trust them to deliver clean water to us on demand, and we trust them to use that same water to remove our waste from wherever we are and to treat it before returning clean water back to the Potomac River. To say our trust has been betrayed by the collapse of the Potomac Interceptor and the overflow of millions of gallons of sewage into the Potomac minimizes the situation. I want to acknowledge the folks who worked through the cold to create a bypass to enable an emergency repair whose necessity was caused by the failure of our government and public utilities to maintain critical infrastructure. Mistakes made in spreadsheets and slideshows led to hands unclogging pumps stuffed with unflushable wipes during the Super Bowl. In June 2022, the National Park Service published a request for public input to a plan to repair the Potomac Interceptor, noting, over time, if not repaired, extensive deterioration could result in the release of raw sewage to the environment. Today, right now, we are pumping 40 to 60 million gallons per day of raw sewage through historic locks in the C&O canals in National Historic Park. On February 19th, speaking with engineers who are out looking at the canal, the buildup of solids was estimated to be about 2 inches thick. This is outrageous. The work proposed in 2022 was for 3 sections of the Potomac Interceptor to be repaired, taking 18, 14, and 9 months respectively. That's slightly less than 3.5 years. And even if we add a year for paperwork and permit delays, which DC Water has continually blamed this on NPS for permit delays, the work should have been completed in 2027, and the work on the broken section would have started in early 2025, a full year before the break. I mention this not only to note the concern that I have about our critical infrastructure, but because DC Water is asking us now to trust them after this catastrophe that they have not identified any other areas of the Potomac Interceptor which require emergency repairs. If they had been able to identify such areas, how did this break happen? We need to know what the plan is to protect our drinking water in the event of a sewage spill upstream of the Great Falls Aqueduct. When asked about the risk to drinking water of a comparable sewage spill up there, a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers representative said they can't solve every situation, but we will attack them as a team. And that is not reassuring. We got lucky this time. This break happened in a place where DC Water had a camera that was able to identify the flow. It happened next to Clara Barton Parkway, where it's easy to bring in heavy equipment and it's easy to have workers on a daily basis there. The Potomac Interceptor runs under the river in 2 locations. It's hard to express how damaging it would be if the break had happened almost anywhere else. Water is life, and the providers and protectors of our water and sewage system have failed us twice, with the sewage spill and with the prioritization of narrative control over honesty and a realistic public assessment of the actions being taken to mitigate the risk posed by the condition of the rest of the Potomac Interceptor. We need fixes to these failures now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Solano. And when you said buildup that's 2 inches thick, I'll say when I was out there a couple of weeks ago, I felt like it was definitely more than 2 inches thick already by then. Yeah. No, I hear you. My own eyes tell me it was a little thicker than that. Okay. Thank you to everybody for your testimony. Let me try to work through a couple of questions here. And I might kind of just go in chronological order the way people were testifying. Mr. Weiss, thank you for your testimony on this. I'm going to ask this to a lot of folks, but so today we get the news that the National Park Service has issued a special use permit that was approved on February 28th. I have not seen what's in the scope of this permit. I haven't seen a remediation plan, even though we talked about this with DC Water when they came and briefed the council. Have you seen what the scope of work is or what's in this permit?
I have not. And actually, I'm a little out of the loop this year with budget and the bottle bill.
You're never
But
out of the loop.
I'm
Mr. Weiss.
relying on Dean and the Potomac Conservancy to.
Okay. All right. One of the other things is we try to think about what we have to do forward, right? Because part of what we're going to be looking at both is understanding what happened, why, how, but also what are we doing moving forward. We do have, from the district standpoint, we have some key boards and commissions that have been unfilled for a while. We have a water quality assurance panel, for example. I don't believe there are any nominees that have been moved forward with that. We have a soil and water conservation entity. I don't believe there's any nominees that have been sent down for that. Perhaps those are groups, at least from the district standpoint, that could be helpful. The water quality assurance panel, for example, is supposed to focus on water quality in the rivers. Do you believe those should be entities that we try to prioritize getting those positions?
I'd have
nominations for the mayor and go through that process? Is it a little duplicative? What do you think?
I'd have to think about this. I mean, I'm on the mayor's leadership council for and sometimes I wonder what's the point? What are we doing here? We're getting great briefings on, technical briefings and others on what's going on. And quite frankly, DCEN led the clean water campaign for a couple decades with the Natural Resources Defense Council and stuff. And I just don't remember these ever really having to interact too much with these two entities. I suspect the
I've never been stood up, so that's probably
Right.
why too.
I suspect that they probably interacted with the COG committees that worked on those issues and such. And again, Hendrick and Dean may have more to say about that. But in terms of actually having an impact, I mean, it's always good for people to talk together and to get briefed and to have make informed decisions. But more layers of that, I'm not sure that I would prioritize that.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Mr. Beelan, am I pronouncing that right? Beelan, Mr. Beelan. All right, so one of the big takeaways I hear from you, and I think I heard this echoed by others, is an ask for a commitment from DC Water for an independent third-party evaluation. I'm going to ask as we hear other witnesses as well, but that feels like that's a pretty strong recommendation, ask, encouragement, appeal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. And I think this is not business as usual. This is not a routine DC water leak. This is not a minor sewage spill. Also, as you've pointed out and others have, given the multi-governmental entities that are involved, as well as citizens groups and whatnot, we need someone that is going to take a hard look. You referenced the Park Service question. We've also got the Army Corps of Engineers. We've got the state of Maryland. We've got the state of Virginia. We've got Fairfax County, Loudoun County, Montgomery County. This is a complex situation, and everyone has a stake in what is found. And that's why we want an independent third party that looks at root causes, and recommends changes. Maybe you get an engineering school, such as with strong background in this, such as Virginia Tech. I think it's not just important because we want to make sure this doesn't happen again in DC water service area, but this aging infrastructure issue is around the country. So what else can we learn from this incident and use it going forward for all sorts of wastewater utilities around the country?
Yeah, thank you. Was the application for the National Park Service special use permit shared with you?
No, we've not seen it. But again, that just amplifies why, as things come out, having someone with independent authority and authorized to really do a deep investigation, given the multiple partners involved, rather than having it come out drip by drip, we need to tackle this holistically.
And yeah, I agree. Have you been asked for